Oh, back to Gaelic Games, and I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Galway GAA chairman Paul Bellew. Paul, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. I'm very well, and yourselves?
Yeah, welcome back. We talked to you about a year ago, I think, at this stage, when you'd pulled off the coup of getting Henry Shefflin to join as... I think your role has changed in the meantime. Did I miss a year, or is that was last year, right?
Yeah, I was chairperson of the hurling committee in Galway last year. We'd have a hurling and football committee, and then we'd have the county board. And after that, I got a notion to go a bit further afield, Ger. And so, yeah, first year as county chairperson just put down.
What's that experience like, moving from being responsible for one of the two sports and then actually having to, undo some of the unconscious bias that everybody has when they're looking after their own parish?
Yeah, it's a fair shout, and there's always been a little bit of that in Galway. I think, you have a hurling background or you have a football background, and to me it was always very over-emphasised and didn't need to be. So it's actually went very well. I've made a strong commitment. I'm a Galway GAA person first and foremost, and everyone was treated equally and fairly, and look, we've a great team with us as well. So I think that kind of divide is going away the longer we go on, and I said everyone got treated equally, be it financially, in every way possible, and that has borne out. But look, it's both teams, both management teams, both boards, everybody's working together now, and that's what's important.
Did it help that you had kind of come through the ranks to see exactly what the difficulties had been, and had gone through some difficult periods as well?
Yeah, I had 2 years done as hurling chairperson, a couple of years done for that as delegate. So I haven't been around the longest, but I probably was there when things weren't in the best position possible. So I had a fairly good understanding of it, and I think a fairly good understanding of what was required to move on. And I've always been very clear there has been good work going on in Galway for 3 or 4 years. It probably just hadn't bubbled to the surface enough, and I think we had been pretty poor communication wise, didn't help ourselves. That was one of the motivating factors for me anyway to get involved. Was we could do a lot better job in helping ourselves and showing what was actually happening. And I think in today's world, as you know better than everyone else, communication is key. And I think that's coming out now.
And that was part of the motivation for coming on last year, was to talk about some of the funding around the hurlers in particular. You made a commitment that the hurling team in particular at that stage, because that was your bailiwick, would not want for any funding, and lo and behold, the figures are absolutely backing up exactly the commitment you made. Both teams combined ended up costing the county board roughly over 2 million, but you've been very, very clear in where the money was spent and how it was spent, and I think it's really welcome that this level of transparency is available to everybody to see.
Absolutely, and there's nothing to hide. You'll see. We'll touch on it again in a couple of minutes. Everything we've produced in the last while has been upfront and open. Even our sponsorship agreement. You hear things at times about being commercially sensitive. Ourselves and Supermax made an agreement. We know what it is. Let the people see what it is. Similarly on the spend, it was always going to be a headline figure, or 2 million. We knew ourselves when it came in that's going to grab headlines and grab attention. I made a commitment that Galway would be one of the best resource teams in hurling when that was my side of the house. When I came in, I said football would be the exact same. Traditionally in Galway, the hurling would outspend the football. That's changed for the first year ever, and obviously reaching the All-Ireland final is a circumstance of that. So we said we make no apologies for it. We'll get the odd kick about it and runaway train. You'll hear things like that, but the bottom line is, we played 49 inter-county games last year between under 20, under 17 and senior. We won the All-Ireland minor. We got the All-Ireland football final. We were beaten by the eventual All-Ireland champions in every competition in hurling by a combined total of 6 points. That's what it takes. That's where it went. We're very transparent about where it went in terms of player expenses, medical gear. A lot of this is GPA mandated, and rightly so. We were one of the people last year when we went on with Crow Park that there should be at least 4 sessions a week for our players, and we'll stand over that again this year. And we carried big panels there in both. We're extending out our development panels as well, so that our management have enough resource from a playing perspective. So as I said, we know where it went. We're not surprised that it hits that figure, and it probably won't be a million miles off it again next year if we have the same success.
So that's the cost of doing business. But I think the other thing that you spoke about when we talked a year ago was the opportunities that a county like Galway, but actually loads of counties have, in tapping into corporate finance, in tapping into forms of sponsorship, in energising the supporter base to buy your gear and to be consumers of your products and partners with you on that road. So it's not, you don't just view them as like potential revenue sources, but like, here is stuff that you would like to be involved in. How can you help us? And every time you help us, it's going to help the various teams that you talk about, and not just the senior inter-county team. So how did you go about raising the revenue? Because you actually ended up with a surplus despite the fact that the spend is bigger than it ever has been before.
Well, that's the thing. If we had a 400k hole and we were spending 2 million, we'd have serious problems. So no, we returned a deficit of about 410k in line with that. So fundraising
a surplus. Sorry,
yeah. So that was very strong, you know, in the year, and it we expect that to be a lot more next year. And we also have the issue, you know, we are paying back about 330k per year on an outstanding loan, but that's in the background now. That's boxed away. It'll be gone by 2027, and we're happy that that's looked after. We're only worried about the future, but there's massive commercial confidence and opportunity in Galway at the moment. There's a real sense of people wanting to be interested, as you said, in the corporate sphere. We raised in the region of 350,000 in 11 days between the All-Ireland semi-final and the final. So the interest was off the charts, I have to say. And again, look, at a lot of this is down to the success of your teams, but also off the field, just letting people know where it goes, what it's for, how it works. We've basically going as cashless as we can from a ticketing perspective, even for the All-Ireland final tickets. So just best practice in a range of areas is bringing that confidence forward. As I say, we had our new deal a couple of weeks ago where, you know, there was interest in the Galway brand, and it managed to get us the best possible deal with Pat and Supermax, who were the incumbent and very determined to hold on to it. And again, for anyone to invest 2.25 million in you over 5 years, whether you win a match or not, is pretty unprecedented if you look into the nature of most of the agreements out there. A lot of them are heavily performance driven.
I think this is really important to just to tease that out a little bit, because there was a period during the previous sponsorship where Supermax had issued questions about where's our money going, we want some transparency. So to me, that's like one of those deals like, well, this deal is going to reach the end and then never again. So obviously you've managed to fix that relationship and deepen it, and they clearly feel like they're getting the level of transparency and reporting that they need to feel like their money is being well spent.
Yeah, and Pat had said that at the launch, you know, and to be fair, again, he's a very strong relationship with Mark Gotcha, our operations and finance manager, and Mike Burke, our treasurer. They were relationship managers. They have a very strong relationship with Pat over the last couple of years. And similarly, when I came in, I couldn't say only good things about it, and the past was the past. And I produced a vision statement of where things were going, and I think they were very happy with that, and they've seen it reflected. So, you know, they've endorsed that. A 5-year agreement in the current climate is not easily got either. So that was kind of a reflection of confidence in the teams. And in the board, as I said, particularly with the base level that's going in no matter what. And, you know, we've a bonus structure in place that I think Pat will be very determined that we reach that as well with success on the field.
I'm sure the Pure Stadium naming rights, Paul, which have been mooted for a while, will be a bit of a boost next year as well. That'll be after Christmas, I assume.
Yeah, there's talks ongoing in that position. There's interest. If the deal is right for us, we'll do it. I think a naming right position can be emotive enough. So it just has to be the right fit for us, and we have options in that regard. The main one for us, Shane, is the lights in Pure Stadium for the league in 2024. That's our real ambition now at the moment. It's probably not acceptable in this day and age that a county, the status of Galway in hurling and football, hasn't the ability to have Saturday night games or even for club at the latter end of the season. So that's very much the major strategic project in Galway at the moment. We've got a good bit of funding put aside for that, but we will need a final push to get that over the line as well. That'll be one of the final pieces to cap off, I think, on the commercial and fundraising side, and it's all systems go on that front.
You wouldn't stick some heaters in maybe to Pure Stadium as well?
I was in it on Sunday, and I couldn't agree more with you. But it was December, so it was. It was cold. It was cold on Sunday. But look, it's Saturday night games. I think mix it up a bit. We often hear bits about Pure Stadium being, not the ideal venue. Again, a lot of that can turn into a bit of myth as well. Traffic, etc. It wasn't really brilliant traffic plans this year in conjunction with the council and the guards, and it worked out pretty well for the inter-county games. So, but Saturday night games bring a different element to it. It'd be great for the city as well, and for the Salt Hill area. So people have plenty of chance to warm up afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
On head jump.
other thing that I wanted to ask you about was the cashless stuff. We're seeing very many counties report a surge in gate receipts from club matches. Now, it might be because the club matches are in a better time of the year, and it's going to be very interesting to see over the next couple of years as we trace trends. How important is going cashless, do you think, in helping to boost the coffers, not just in Galway but nationally?
Yeah, I mean, we were about, I think, just over 80% cashless this year. We left a turnstile option for pretty much for OAPs. We had a big discussion about it. We left it. We charged more then for non-OAPs, for people that were coming up on the day, to disincentivise, people paying cash. Excuse me. So yeah, it is the way forward. You're also, from a planning perspective, Joe, we're just saying we know how much tickets we've sold in advance. From a stewarding point of view, from a data perspective, it's excellent. The 2 million figure was always going to jump out on spend, but the big story for us internally here in Galway again is our club game generated 1.4 million. This year, 1.2 million of that in gates, the rest in streaming and commercial income. It's off the charts. I really find it hard to explain. That is the big story for a club scene to generate 1.4 million.
And do you have any idea, Paul, what that would have been before the pandemic? So is there anything that you can kind of...
The last comparable figure was just under the million in 2019.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So a 35 to 40% increase.
It's a significant increase, and it's the growth and popularity of our games. Look, I'm a big fan of the split season. I'm not going to mince my words on it. I actually think you're going to see a lot of surpluses in the next few weeks, and I think there's a message in there somewhere that club games, it'll never replace the county game. I've never been a fan of this. I've often heard it been said. I know it's heard it on this show a lot as well. The club is a good product and all this. It's not. It's a local product, but that's okay too. And I am a big advocate for it. I know there's certain areas where we think there's losses, but I think counties are becoming more sustainable and ability to stand on their own feet because of when the games have been played, because of the interest generated in them. So for me, from that perspective, I just think no more than the age grade piece, which I don't know, we don't even want to touch that.
Well, no, I do, yeah.
We could be here for an hour. But again, can we not just leave things for a couple of years and see how they go? Because we have this habit in the GAA of changing something after 1 year or 2 years when we don't fully know what's working or what's not working. And I would say that, is the split season perfect? No. Is it better than anything we've had before? Absolutely, yes.
Before I touch on the age grade thing, Paul, can I just... it was interesting to see comments from John Costello out of the Dublin GAA annual report. He was talking about this national coaching and development funding, and of course there's been changes to qualifying criteria, and he was pointing out that it means there's an annual coaching cut into the capital of €447,000. Does this affect Galway in a similar vein? Do you have any sympathy for Dublin? Or?
It doubles Galway's funding, but we're not happy with that. There was the John Connellan motion last year, which we were much more in favour of, that was membership based. Galway and Cork had got the rawest deal possible from a coaching funding perspective for years, and we've always been pretty annoyed about that. The John Connellan motion went forward last year, which would have given us in the region of $750,000 to 800,000 in funding. We've ended up with about 550, up from something in the 200s. So obviously that's positive, but again, you always want more. So we want an equitable funding model. Of course, in fairness to John, that's a massive hit in terms of what you had. But relatively speaking, sympathy-wise, I've had to look after Galway, Cork have to look after Cork, and we're only coming back to some form of parity now in terms of our membership relative to what we had been receiving.
It always struck me that the way that this conversation works is pitting counties against each other, as opposed to actually, I always feel like if the counties got together and decided that they were going to tell Croke Park what was going to happen, there might be a better way of doing this. It feels a little bit like the funding in Dublin was designed to try and get the urban centres GAA coaching at a level that was going to allow them to be competitive with other sports, and just as a general kind of, we don't fund sport properly in the country, and we're starting to get to a point where our funding matches other European countries or New Zealand or Australia, but we're not there yet. I actually feel like you're right. You should get the same as Dublin, but Dublin shouldn't be cut. You guys should just be getting more. It turns out that the GAA does generate loads of cash because they don't have to pay the players and they're filling massive stadiums. You know, there's definitely a way for the money to be generated and spent more equitably. But I think there was always the Dubs, and I'm not accusing you of that, but certainly we in the media were always guilty of the Dubs are getting too much, it's a disaster. It's like, pay everybody else more.
It doesn't all have to be relative to each other, as you rightly say. You know, can you not look after the issues where they are? And it was very successful. Let's be honest. And there were risks at the time in the capital. I think the big one for me, and I've raised this at coaching development level in Croke Park, is what I think is there needs to be an urban strategy. And an urban strategy in Dublin doesn't look too different from an urban strategy in Galway, Belfast, Limerick, Waterford. That's where I have my concerns going forward, is that's where the strategy piece and the money to match should go. We'll always work different parts of Galway, rurally, etc. Will always, a certain amount will always look after that. So that's where my piece has come from, is the urban strategy needs to be matched across the country. And I wouldn't disagree with anything you have to say. I think there's enough to go around, and it shouldn't be about taking away to satisfy, possibly some competitive intra-county grudges between people. There should be enough to go around.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the urban strategy is a great idea. And I don't. Is that being adopted?
There is no concrete urban strategy, and I've had it said to me a couple of times, every city is different. Like, not really. Most of them have the same challenges, same issues, same problems. And I think if there's one thing, and I said it was only 2 weeks ago, we had a call with coaching and games, and I did push it again. There should be an urban strategy devised for the GAA, because it's where the next big battleground from a participation issue is.
Well, surely somebody like the ESRI could easily come up with here's the definition of an urban area, these are the ones that would qualify, and that's where we'll start with, and we'll roll it out to smaller towns which also have dense populations if we need to, as and when. Like you got to think 20-25 years in these types of projects, because the impact of the 20-25 years of investment in Dublin is starting to manifest itself, and let's try and make it as equitable as possible without costing the GAA communities who have been successful the funding, because there's going to be job losses, and I'll see the impact of that in my local club and be like, this doesn't actually make any sense, when actually there's a way of funding this so that everybody feels like they're getting the same. But sorry, we went down that tangent. Let's talk about the underage stuff, because you did speak about this very strongly in your statement. What's your view? Where should we be going with this?
As I said, you could do one of your shows that you do on a Saturday. You could spend 2 hours. I'd be annoyed at some of what's going on in terms of the emotive narrative out there. We're losing players. Like, Jay's always lost players. I played under 21 15, 16 years ago. We struggle to field. It narrows down. You come up along, you do lose players, but this thing, we're losing them to rugby and soccer as if it never happened before. This emotive argument about 18, it has to be 18. I just don't think you can have your cake and eat it. Decoupling is one of the most important things that has ever happened in the GAA and it's not just about making fixtures' lives easier. It's actually about making clubs and players' lives easier. There is no way in a dual county, Ger, that you can have an 18-year-old playing minor at 18, allowed play adult, and then expect to put a competition in between 18 and adult at under 20 or under 21 level. It is just absolutely not feasible in a county like Galway. And to be honest, I don't think a dual county who promotes the game equally, who spends their money equally, and has more people playing games than any other counties, should be punished that you end the dual player. Because let's be very clear, that's what would happen if you allow minor go to 18 and allow them play adult. That is what's going to happen. I mapped it out at convention. It would mean in Galway that an 18-year-old in a dual club or a dual area would be playing 8 games in 16 days over a 3-month period, a 12 to 14-week period. What would it mean? It would mean the end of the dual player. What would it also mean? It would mean the end of the age grade above 18. At 20 or 21, that would just disappear, and that will create the next problem of where there's no pathway through. So look, we're an outlier in Galway. I do understand this, and I know it might bore people to tears. We're at 13, 15, 17. We run 19s at football, 20s at hurling, and then up into adult. We've never had more people playing the games in Galway. We've never had more participation. We've never had more teams coming through to the very end at adult level, which is what it's all about. And I just think there's been a failure in some departments to run competitions above 17 that are really truly meaningful. And I think it's just got a little bit lazy that no, it didn't work at the time. The 19 competition was a disaster. Well, when was it played? Were you strong enough with your clubs, or were your clubs strong enough to put priority on those grades? We had 2 very successful competitions this year. Our under 20 hurlers got a minimum of 6 games, and our under 19 footballers got a minimum of 9. And our participation rates were up in the 90% in the championships. And no, some clubs weren't happy. I'm not going to come on here and say it was, perfect. It wasn't, but it was a proper games program all the way through. And I'm just sticking with it. And if anything comes in that doesn't allow us to do that, it would be devastating in Galway. So I just think there needs to be a lot more data, evidence, and facts in this debate rather than the emotive one.
Yeah.
It's like the split season in some ways.
Well, I was going to say, it goes back to your first point about we have this tradition of throwing stuff out before it really gets the opportunity to bed in, for fear it might work. Like, there's definitely...
Yeah, exactly.
It strikes me that there hasn't been a lot of leadership on this, like, because they made these changes on the basis of long form, longitudinal studies that suggested this was the best thing to do. It got put through, but then now it has no champion. I don't know who to talk to go, well, why did you do this in the first place? Remind everybody about that. Try and carry the day about the argument. It's like, look, we tried. Sure, what can we do?
I would agree with you. I mean, has anybody come out and said that's the end of the dual player if this goes through? Has anybody said the problems it will create, that there'll be no pathway after 18? And this again is about the elite player. But look, at from a leadership perspective, I don't disagree. I think someone has to nail their colours to the mast here and explain. Be very clear what the repercussions of this, not drift back into a vote of Congress that could have massive repercussions. And I'm more concerned about the club piece on that front, because look, the GAA is a participatory sport. I love the intercounty. Don't get me wrong. I've been involved in it. It's great. But the club stuff GAA is not a spectator sport. It is a participatory sport. And if we don't keep players playing and clubs thriving, then that there won't be a whole lot left to watch. So I'm passionate about it. On the inter-county age grades, we're actually quite agnostic here in Galway, whether it's 17 or 19 or 18 or 20, because it doesn't matter as much at inter-county, because again, the idea that you're losing an elite player there, again, factually, data-wise, not the case. They can't all make it at adult level. You're only allowed to put out 15, but they're all playing club. Everyone that played for Galway minor hurling and football over the last year, they're all still playing club and whatever. Our big thing in Galway is, and there's probably going to be a bit about it in the next while, we're still fuming over the way our under-17s in hurling are in no man's land.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because my background's a hurling background. It's clear yours is too. It always struck me that like hurling people are hurling people up until it might cost them a medal or their underage team a medal.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. We're just going through it at the moment. We're pretty annoyed, and again it goes back to a leadership element. We put in the request again this year. Fergal Healy's involved. He's over our minor team. He's all genuinely focused on development. He was in with the seniors a couple of years ago, completely flipped his mindset in terms of what minor should be about in terms of development, and that's where we're going. We would rather play 5 games and lose an All-Ireland than play 2 and win 1. That's genuinely where we're at. And I mean that. Our minor footballers last year won All-Ireland. Great. Didn't win a Connacht title. Played 9 games. And they got so much better throughout. But they deserve the same amount of opportunity to play 9 games as did Mayo, as a Galway team does against a Clare or a Tipperary. So we've asked a few times and we've got pushed around. No, it's CCC's decision. No, it's development CCC. No, sorry, we'd love to let you in, but Leinster won't let you in. Leinster, no, it's not us, it's the individual counties. So we've put a motion to Croke Park. Let's see, will it get on the floor? I'd have my concerns about that. It's just a real frustrating element that this is going on in this day and age. Another one that I really want to tackle, and it's good to have the platform to do it. There's been this little thing thrown out whenever there's been a response from national level. Oh, Galway want it every way. Their club teams. We'll go into Leinster in the morning on club. We'll go into Munster in the morning in club. Put us wherever you want from a club perspective in hurling. We've never ever held this position that we wanted it every way ourselves. We will start at the first round of every competition, and only rightly so. I think you could accept that's the way it should be.
It doesn't make any sense for the Leinster counties or the Leinster Council to hold the position they hold. It would greatly enhance the quality of competition at all levels to have another county in playing. It doesn't make any sense. I like, either they are hurling people or they aren't.
Yeah, and I think that's why we want to get it to the floor of Congress to see, let's stop the hiding now, and who is it? Because look, again, we're spoiled with the people we have involved, with Fergal, with Joe Canning, a few of these grades, but these guys are training. The training ratio, they have no matches to play, right? By the time Galway play a Munster or a Leinster team next year in the round robin that's currently envisaged, the other team will have played 5 games. Now, how anyone thinks that is fair or equitable, and look, we have a very good minor team next year. We may win it, we may not. Again, I would genuinely, every one of those management team would be in a position where they'd give it up in the morning. And we've a lot to do on our own side of the house. Don't get me wrong. I can't put everything on that. We've often talked about why has the leap never gone through from minor to adult? That's what we're fixing at the moment. We had a fantastic launch last night in the Clayton Hotel with Setanta College, a partnership for all our underage squads under the tutelage of Des Ryan. Des, who you probably know from Arsenal. So Des is going taking over that side of things in partnership with Setanta for us. But these are the things we have to do now, just to stay busy when we're not playing games.
Paul, what's the single biggest issue or concern facing county boards heading into 2023?
Oh, that's a good question. I think from our perspective, the volunteer piece to me is one I'd be most worried about. And I mean that. I know that might certain companies have financial issues. Just looking forward, the level of professionalism on the field, and obviously we spent 2 million. I don't want to speak outside both sides of our mouth, but we ran Galway GAA this year. 4.5 million business with 5 permanent staff, and an officer base that claimed €128 in expenses. Now, that's extremely unsustainable going forward. I think you have to have that level of energy and commitment is great, but how long can you keep it going? I think that, to me, I can see it in clubs as well and in county boards, is the time and the resource to keep counties up on the field. I think that's a massive threat. And I know people will laugh at me and say, you spent 2 million, you're making it a lot worse for others. But that, to me, would be across the board the biggest threat to county boards going forward.
It's definitely, and it's a threat to all of society that isn't full-time professional in all sports, and we hear it from everybody. Paul, it's always really interesting to talk to you. I think we're going to follow up on the success or otherwise of that motion to get the underage teams into Leinster, because it just doesn't make any sense. So thanks a million for explaining all that too, because I do think that it's important that we get to see how county boards can turn things around really quickly with the right people and a clear vision, and also the support of great management teams, a clear volunteer ethos, and then also just how it should look when it's run properly. So hopefully we got to talk through all that. Great to have you with us, Paul. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, lads. Cheers.
That's Paul Bellew there, the County Board Chairman of Galway.